You're a cyberpunk, you're a witcher, a thief, the survivor of the apocalypse, you're a legacy commander. Whatever you are, chances are that lately you have been either enhanced or remade. Here's where you're expecting me to tell you in the olden days things were much better and there were far more original games. The evidence for that just doesn't stack up. Here is a chart for the best-selling games so far in 2022. And here is a chart for the best-selling games in 2002. We can see right here there are only 3 or 4 games that are perhaps entirely original, the rest are spawned from sequels or pre-existing franchises. In fact, some of these are still selling today as enhanced re-released versions. I'm looking at you, Grand Theft Auto. And this title isn't alone. In fact, a big question, just why are there so many remakes and enhanced editions? Just this year alone, very recently in fact, we've got Witcher 3, a nice free upgrade, excellent game by the way. We've also had the enhanced version of GTA 5, and if we go back just a little further, there's the anniversary edition of Skyrim, a 11-year-old game at this point. Let's not forget the Uncharted series as well as The Last of Us Part 1. Last of Us Part 1 recently made an appearance on PlayStation 5 and is soon to appear on PC. Now this is all well and good, but wouldn't you prefer to see, instead of these remakes and enhanced versions, wouldn't you prefer to see entirely original games? Well, to be fair, there are a few of them. They make their appearance here and there. Elden Ring, for example, the best-selling game or second best-selling game of the year so far. So yeah, pretty much an entirely original game, even if it was spawned from Dark Souls. It seems to me then that the reason for all these enhanced editions and remakes and reselling of existing titles and the lack of original titles are both topics that are inextricably linked together. It would all be well and good me as a YouTuber sitting here and telling you that in the olden days things were much better and there were far more original games and much better games, but as we saw just a moment ago, that just doesn't hold up, and I didn't purposely go out there and choose 2002 as a specific year. It's just simply that was 20 years ago from today. But pick any year and you'll find the story is largely the same. Plenty of original games out there during the year, but for the most part the best-selling games will be sequels and re-releases. But I'll also grant you, and I think it's entirely fair to say, that in the last couple of years this seems to have become endemic. There are just so many of them. From time to time, a remake does make an appearance that is absolute quality. I think Final Fantasy VII Remake was very, very good. A game I really did enjoy and well worth the purchase. And that largely because it wasn't just an enhancement of an old game, but effectively rebuilt from the ground up. When we take a look at some of the other titles though, such as Grand Theft Auto 5, which got the enhanced next-gen version this year, as well as the anniversary edition of Skyrim, which came out not too long ago, well, I think the entire remake and enhanced edition becomes a little bit more questionable. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that these remakes, these enhanced editions are worthless or that they're no good. Far from it, in fact. For much of the past few weeks, I've been playing a lot of GTA 5, an excellent game, and putting that on the Xbox Series X with all the enhancements has been nice indeed to see. I'm also about to dive into Witcher 3, so yeah, I'm not afraid of these remakes. I don't think they're a bad thing in and of themselves, but it's more of a question of just why do these titles keep reappearing. In part, that will be because people just keep rebuying them again, with the exception perhaps of Witcher 3, which is a free upgrade, very, very nice. GTA 5, meanwhile, people had to rebuy that if they wanted the enhanced version. Same with Skyrim in Anniversary Edition. It's also the same with The Last of Us Part 1, another game you're going to need to repurchase. And I think, honestly speaking, there is a very real reason for this, well, a couple of real reasons for this. First, of course, is the fact that the companies behind these titles love money. If you're going to have a popular game, why not resell it and get a whole bunch of money again for the same title? An obvious choice for any big company out there. But equally as valid, I think, is the fact that these are quality games. They are very good games, in fact. They're all very much replayable, and in some cases they are certainly worth the repurchase. That's not really the problem in and of itself. What is the problem is the lack of other original titles that exist out there. So fundamentally speaking, I think there are at least 2 different things going on here, 2 different reasons that we keep seeing these remakes and the reason people keep playing them. Well, third if you count the money side of it, but there are 2 other main factors. The first is the lack of quality games, the lack of quality original titles that make an appearance. These do happen, but they're few and far between. Elden Ring is one such example of a quality title, but be honest with yourself here. How often do these types of games make an appearance? Once a year, twice a year, or even less? I'd go with perhaps far less. So when you're faced with the quandary of playing all these rather dull games that are out there, and you've got the option to replay that one really great game with all the enhancements, the choice becomes pretty obvious. Now there is another element here that I do think is going on, and it's the domination and rise of live service titles. Take a look at Steam charts. Look at the top 20 games here. What have we got? Counter-Strike, an old game. Dota 2, an old game. PUBG, pretty old at this point. Last Ark. Apex Legends is perhaps one of the newer ones here. Goose Duck, okay. That's clearly a new one and immensely popular right now. Call of Duty, an old franchise. We could go on. Grand Theft Auto 5, Team Fortress 2, Rust, War Thunder, all very old titles. But many of these, I'd say most in fact, are indeed live service titles. They're ongoing games that people put immense time into. They play these year after year after year. Now of course this isn't a new phenomena. We have seen this happen for quite a long time now. We can take a look at EVE Online for example. This is now a very nearly 20-year-old game, come out in 2003 I do believe. World of Warcraft, another one, come out in 2004. Again, very close to 20 years old at this point, and these are not lone examples. But I'd put this thought out there that since the arrival of MMOs, and specifically live service games over the more recent years, it's become second nature for people to see existing titles sit around for many years at a time. Whereas years ago, we go back to 2002, and some of those titles people would play for a year, absolute tops perhaps, and then they'd move on to another game. In fact, most people would probably play those games for a few weeks before moving on, but the exceptional ones would perhaps last for a little longer, perhaps as long as a year. But here we are today, and it's not unheard of for people to play the same game for 5 years at a time, 10 years at a time, or even in some cases 20 years at a time. Elite Dangerous is another such title that's been around for quite a while at this point. Many years, 7 years I think since release, and just recently it has received an enhanced update, moving the base version of the game up to version 4. Meanwhile, version 3 carries on in the form of Legacy Mode, something for the older players perhaps. In fact, people playing the same game for so many years, this is so pervasive throughout the gaming industry that even Todd Howard recently said that Bethesda are designing Elder Scrolls 6 with that very point in mind. He said that people are playing Skyrim 10 years later, and even 10 years from now there's a chance they may still be playing it. So Bethesda want to design Elder Scrolls 6 with the concept in mind that people may still be playing it 20 years after release. And that has some dramatic effect I would imagine also in the design of that game. So what does all of this mean? Well, it means that people have become very much accustomed to the same titles sitting around for year after year and even decade after decade. And to make that point even clearer, we're not talking about the same franchise here. We're not talking about players moving from Elder Scrolls 3 to Elder Scrolls 4. We're not talking about players moving from GTA 4 to GTA 5. We're talking about players sitting on the exact same game, decade after decade. So I really do think that this is the second main point. We're seeing so many remakes and so many enhanced editions over recent times. So to sum those 2 points up, the first is that yes, they are high quality games. Players love to replay them, they're very much replayable, and also there is, combined with that point, a lack of other original titles to directly compete with them. There's only a handful of these games over the tens of years that really do stand out. The other point is that people have become very much accustomed to playing the same titles for years at a time. So is it any wonder that we're seeing so many remakes and enhanced editions? Perhaps the best we can hope for is that when it does happen, we get the case of CD Projekt Red, who put out great updates for Cyberpunk 2077 and put out great updates for The Witcher even this many years after it was released. All of them entirely free, unless they of course release expansions, which is something different. What I'm less enamored about is seeing things like Skyrim and GTA 5 get an enhanced edition and then the companies selling that to you as an additional purchase. Feels a little bit cheeky, feels a little bit cheesy perhaps, as I know a lot of work goes into them, but these titles are very, very popular and have made many millions at this point. Would it really do them any harm to release such upgrades for free? Meanwhile, remakes such as The Last of Us Part 1, well, I think that exists in a bit of shade of grey. It's such a pretty much substantial update and enhancement over the original that I think it's entirely understandable that it is sold as a new game with a pretty much a full asking price. Final Fantasy VII, meanwhile, yes, it is a remake, but I think it's a bit of an outlier as it's effectively an entirely new game. Very little from the original game goes into that, aside from the characters and the story. Yeah, they had to rebuild that entirely from scratch. So yeah, I see that one as more of a new game rather than as a remake. At any rate, I think we've pretty much well established that, yeah, there are a number of reasons that these remakes do exist, and some of you out there may agree with the points I've made here, some of you may entirely disagree, some of you may have some additional points and reasons that you feel there's so many remakes and enhanced editions happening right now. And if you do have any thoughts on those, do please leave your ideas in the comments section below. Always love to read those comments and to see people's ideas and thoughts on how these things are seen. Now, there is another thought I want to add into this video, another consideration, and that is just how long is all of this? How long are these remakes going to go on for? This year we saw Grand Theft Auto Trilogy, a definitive edition release. That is 20 years more or less after these titles originally made an appearance. Is Rockstar going to re-release these again in 10 years from now? Will we see the definitive edition of the Grand Theft Auto Trilogy in 2032? Will it perhaps include an enhanced version of GTA 4 to go along with it? Who knows? Is the same going to happen with Skyrim? Will we see a 20th anniversary edition? The thing is, the way things are going right now, this seems extremely possible. I don't think we're going to see a stop of any remakes or any enhanced editions. Instead, I think we're going to see an ever-increasing list of these titles. So when Elder Scrolls 5 finally makes an appearance, when we get to see whatever comes out next, I really do feel that likely Bethesda will still keep releasing future versions of Skyrim to go along with that. When we get GTA 6, will there be enhanced versions of GTA 5? Well, maybe not. It will depend really on the performance of how the new version, if there is another one, of GTA Online goes, because obviously that is a big market driver for Rockstar. But the point still stands. I suspect that in many years from now, in decades from now, we're going to still be playing not only the same franchises, but the very same titles. And I'm not sure that thought is entirely encouraging, is it? Do we really want to play the next, latest, greatest version again on the PlayStation 7 of The Witcher 3? Or would we rather an entirely brand new franchises with original characters, original worlds, and all that other lovely stuff? I feel somewhat to an extent we're getting stuck in a bit of a Groundhog Day, an endless loop of repeating releases, and that this may well carry on forever. And in large part, yes, it's because these games are successful and that they're very, very good. Yes, it's because players have got used to game titles sticking around for years at a time, but I also think the bulk of the problem really is down to the lack of originality in the industry. Not just in the gaming industry, but I think we see the same things in the entertainment industry at large. Both with movies, TV shows, music, pretty much anything you can think of really. It's just, a lot of lack of originality out there. That's not to say there's not some great stuff. These good things do come along. But I don't know that getting stuck in a Groundhog Day loop with these great products is the best thing for the future. In fact, talking of future games, there's another video I'd like you to watch, so please do stick around and click on the thumbnail right here. Here I talk about the future of space games, which seems to be heading in a very unexpected direction. Do check it out. Click on that thumbnail, check the video.